information, knowledge, and your secrets. I know so many things I shouldn't know, and they all know it. They all know it. Why? Because you don't make me the villain.
2 years. That's how long Steve Harvey has been walking around with Katt Williams living rent-free in his head. 2 years. And still, every single time somebody shoves a microphone in Steve's face, the man cannot stop himself from bringing up Katt. Now ask yourself, if someone was truly beneath you, truly irrelevant, truly just a jealous hater with nothing credible to say, would you still be talking about them 730 days later? Would you? Because Steve Harvey, the man with the suits, the talk show, the game show empire, the motivational books, and the self-proclaimed relationship guru persona, that man cannot let it go. And here's what's wild. Katt Williams didn't come for Steve unprovoked. He came with receipts. He came with specifics. He came with names that rhymed with something that made the entire internet stop scrolling and pay attention. And while Steve was out here clapping back and threatening to knock perms out of heads, one person in that Harvey household stayed conspicuously quiet, almost suspiciously quiet. Marjorie Harvey. Not one word, not one Instagram story, not one subtle response, nothing. And when somebody that deep in a controversy says absolutely nothing, that silence is louder than any clap back. So today we are pulling the curtain all the way back. We are going beyond the memes and the viral clips and getting into the full picture of who Marjorie Harvey really is, where she came from, how she operates, and why Katt Williams, of all people, may be the only one bold enough to say what a lot of people have been whispering for years. Because what Katt revealed isn't just messy gossip, it's a pattern, and patterns don't lie. Katt Williams and the Club Shay interview that changed everything. Let's rewind to the interview that broke the internet. When Katt Williams sat across from Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay, nobody quite anticipated the level of chaos that was about to unfold. In one sitting, Katt dismantled reputations, reopened old wounds, and said out loud what many people in Hollywood had been whispering in green rooms for decades.
Never been heard in all of Black Hollywood. They feel comfortable sitting here lying to you about it.
He didn't just talk about one person, he drew a full map. But the part that hit different, the part that had people rewinding and rewatching, was when Katt started talking about a so-called program. According to Katt, comedians who want to ascend to a certain level in Hollywood don't just get there on talent alone. There's a process, there's a system, and part of that system, allegedly, comes with a very specific package deal. A light-skinned, unusual featured wife who, curiously, has never once given a public interview, not one. And before you write that off as comedy hyperbole, Katt doubled down. He said it wasn't just one person he was referencing. He said that description applied to 7 different people in the industry. 7. Let that marinate. Now, whether you believe Katt's version of Hollywood or not, you have to acknowledge the fact that Steve Harvey's response to those comments was disproportionate for someone who claimed the allegations were baseless. He went to the internet almost immediately. He threatened violence. He called Katt irrelevant. He said they weren't in the same league. He said Katt was jealous and grieving. And all of that energy, every single bit of it, was pointed directly at a man Steve claimed didn't even register on his radar. Does that track? Because when something truly doesn't bother you, your response is usually silence, not a public declaration that you still have hands. What's Steve so afraid of? And more importantly, who is he protecting? The woman behind the curtain. Let's talk about Marjorie Harvey, not the version she curates for Instagram, not the perfectly lit photos on private jets, or the front-row Fashion Week appearances, or the designer everything. Let's talk about the real origin story, because it is something else entirely. Before Marjorie became the queen of the Harvey household, before the lifestyle brand and the influencer status and the celebrity cookouts, she was living a completely different life. A life that most of her current followers probably don't know about. And a life that, according to multiple sources and court records, was deeply entangled with some very serious criminal activity. Marjorie's first husband was a man named Jim Townsend. And Jim wasn't a businessman or an entertainer or an entrepreneur. Jim was a kingpin, a genuine, federal government on your trail, moving weight at serious volume drug dealer. And sources have consistently maintained that Marjorie wasn't just standing on the sidelines being oblivious. She was reportedly active enough in that world that both the FBI and the DEA had her on their radar. The claim? That federal investigators told Jim directly, "Cooperate with us, flip on your people, or Marjorie goes down too," because they had what they described as substantial evidence of her own criminal involvement. Jim Townsend cooperated. He still got indicted for attempting to purchase 40 kilograms of cocaine. He received a life sentence. He served 26 years in federal prison before President Obama pardoned him in 2017. And Marjorie? She walked out of that entire situation without a single charge filed against her. Not one. She didn't even wait around particularly long after Jim got sentenced. She filed for divorce within 5 years of him going away and moved on.
Marjorie Harvey getting divorced?
I don't give a rat's behind about Steve Harvey or Marjorie and what they're going through.
Now here's where the story gets even more layered. Who did Marjorie move on with immediately after leaving Jim? His cousin, a man named Darnell Woods, who was also, by the way, a drug dealer. She didn't just step sideways, she stepped directly into the same lane with someone from the same family. And Darnell Woods is actually the biological father of Lori Harvey, the daughter who is now one of the most recognizable young socialites in the country. Does the pattern not jump out at you? Because it should. Marjorie married Darnell in the early 2000s. Then Steve entered the picture. And once Marjorie clocked that Steve's star was about to go supernova, Darnell got left behind just like Jim did. And just like Jim, Darnell ended up in prison. 2 husbands, both dealers, both convicted, both abandoned by Marjorie once the usefulness ran out, and Marjorie walked away clean both times. The Memphis moment and the calculated comeback. Here's the story Steve and Marjorie love to tell on every talk show and magazine cover. They met at a comedy club in Memphis in the late 1990s. Steve saw Marjorie walk in late, stopped his entire set, stared at her, and then said out loud to everyone in the building that he was going to marry that woman. Romantic, right? Destiny. 2 souls recognizing each other across a crowded room. But hold on, because here's the part they conveniently leave out. When they met in those late 90s, Marjorie checked Steve out and then left. Not because she didn't like him, but because, according to multiple accounts, his bank account wasn't doing what it needed to do. She reportedly dipped when she realized Steve didn't have the resources to match her aspirations at that particular moment. Fast forward to 2005. Steve Harvey now has a hit television sitcom. He's a household name. His career trajectory is pointed straight up. And suddenly, Marjorie reappears. Suddenly, she's ready to give this thing a real shot. Quite the coincidence in timing, wouldn't you say? And here's the part that Steve's current fans sometimes forget. When Marjorie came back into Steve's life in 2005, Steve was still married to his second wife, Mary Shackleford. Married, not separated, not in the process of filing. Married. And Mary has gone on record saying that Steve was actively cheating on her with Marjorie during that time. The affair was happening while she was still his wife, still in their home, still building a life she thought was real. So the fairy tale love story that Steve and Marjorie peddle, it started as an affair. That's not an accusation. That's what Mary Shackleford said in her own words. What Mary Shackleford said and why it matters. Mary Shackleford's testimony about her divorce from Steve Harvey should have been major headlines. It should have been a full conversation. Because what she described was not just a painful breakup. What she described sounded like a coordinated campaign to destroy her. According to Mary, Steve didn't just leave. He took their son, Winton. He allegedly turned Winton against her. He maneuvered the courts in ways she could barely comprehend, while she was still reeling from the emotional devastation of a cheating husband. He had her evicted from their home. Businesses she was involved in disappeared. Money gone. Cars gone. And at the lowest, most vulnerable moment of her life, she says he used all of that vulnerability against her. Now, who was allegedly orchestrating this from behind the scenes? Sources close to the situation have pointed directly at Marjorie. The claim is that it wasn't Steve's idea to destroy Mary so thoroughly. Steve was following a script, and Marjorie, fresh off watching 2 previous partners go down in flames while she walked away unscathed, was the one writing it. Reportedly, Marjorie advised Steve to paint Mary as mentally unstable in the press. And Steve did exactly that. He ran with the narrative. He called Mary bitter. He called her toxic. He insinuated that she was the one damaging their son. Classic gaslighting tactics deployed against a woman who was already down. Katt Williams saw this. He called it out explicitly. He pointed to the fact that Steve used to credit his first wife publicly for getting him to where he was, saying she was the reason for his success. And then once Marjorie arrived, that entire narrative got rewritten. Suddenly Marjorie was the one who believed in him. Suddenly Marjorie was the rock. History got erased and replaced, and apparently Steve expected nobody to notice or remember. Does that sound like a man leading his household? Or does it sound like a man who traded one story for another because someone more powerful told him to? The Lori Harvey playbook. If you want to understand Marjorie fully, you have to look at what sources are saying about how she's raising, or more precisely, deploying, her daughter Lori Harvey. Because allegedly, the lessons Marjorie is passing down aren't about independence, ambition, or self-sufficiency. They're about something else entirely. Sources speaking to Radar Online described significant tension inside the Harvey household, centered on Marjorie's relationship with Lori. The claim? That Marjorie is obsessed with positioning Lori with a famous, wealthy husband. That Lori is essentially being trained in the same methods Marjorie used throughout her own life. And that Marjorie's other children, Morgan and Jason, are practically invisible in comparison to how heavily she pushes Lori into the spotlight. Now think about Lori's public dating history. She has been linked to some of the most sought-after men in entertainment and sports. And in almost every case, the relationship ended before it reached any kind of permanent, legally binding commitment. Which brings us to Michael B. Jordan.
Finally make the relationship official. Michael B. Jordan and Lori Harvey confirmed they're actually dating on the gram.
By most accounts, Michael B. Jordan was serious about Lori Harvey. Serious enough that he was reportedly ready to propose. But allegedly, he asked Lori to sign a prenuptial agreement first, an entirely standard request for someone with his level of wealth and earning power. A prenup is not an insult. It is a legal document that protects both parties. But according to sources close to the situation, Marjorie shut the prenup conversation down immediately. She allegedly convinced Lori to walk away from the relationship entirely, rather than sign anything that would limit what she could access. Let that land. A man worth millions, reportedly ready to commit for life, and the relationship allegedly ended not because of incompatibility or lack of love, but because a prenup was on the table and someone decided that was unacceptable. Who does that benefit? Not Lori. Lori lost a serious partner, not Michael. He clearly cared enough to propose. The only person that strategy benefits is someone who has built an entire life philosophy around attaching to wealth without signing away any future leverage. Katt Williams didn't just call out Marjorie's past. He called out the machinery she's allegedly running in the present. And the machinery involves teaching her daughter to do exactly what she did. Identify the target, time the entry, maximize the position, and never sign anything that limits the exit. Steve Harvey's silence is the tell. Here is what nobody is fully addressing. In all of Katt Williams' commentary, in all the receipts he laid out, in all the pointed language he used about the program and the wives and the contracts, Marjorie Harvey has said absolutely nothing. Not on social media, not in any interview, not through a publicist, not through a carefully crafted statement. Complete silence. Steve, on the other hand, has responded publicly multiple times. He went to social media. He appeared on the Pivot podcast and talked about Katt again. He called Katt jealous. He called Katt bitter. He talked about how they're not in the same league. He talked about grief and funerals and podcasts becoming the place where people process their inadequacies. He said everything except the one thing that would actually address the substance of what Katt said. He never once denied the specific claims. He attacked the messenger. He dismissed the platform. He questioned Katt's character. But he never looked into a camera and said clearly and specifically, the allegations about the program, about the contract, about Marjorie's history, about how his divorce from Mary went down, none of that is true. He never said that. Why not? Because when someone attacks the messenger instead of the message, it usually means the message hit something real, Steve's anger is not the behavior of an innocent man brushing off lies. Steve's anger is the behavior of someone who knows exactly what Katt is talking about and is furious that it's now out in the open where everyone can see it. And Marjorie's silence? That's the behavior of someone who has been in dangerous situations before and knows that the smartest move when the spotlight comes is to say absolutely nothing and let someone else take the heat. That someone else is Steve. The pattern that Katt Williams decoded. Let's zoom out and look at the full picture that Katt Williams painted, because taken individually, each piece of Marjorie's story could be explained away. People end up with the wrong partner. Divorces get messy. Business decisions go sideways. Families are complicated. But when you line it all up, the FBI and DEA investigation that went nowhere, the two drug dealer husbands who both ended up in prison while she walked away clean, the reappearance in Steve's life exactly when his career peaked, the affair that ended his second marriage, the court battle that allegedly dismantled Mary Shackleford's entire life, the narrative control that followed, the Lori positioning strategy, the prenup refusal. When you lay it all out in sequence, it stops looking like bad luck and starts looking like a method. Katt Williams was not throwing random insults. He was describing a type. He was describing someone who identifies powerful men, attaches strategically, extracts maximum value, and exits cleanly when the situation shifts or someone better comes along. He was describing someone who allegedly uses other people, including her own children, as instruments in a larger financial and social strategy. And he was saying that Steve Harvey, one of the most recognizable faces in American entertainment, is not the man running that household. He is the product of it. The comedy was the delivery. The content was a thesis. And the most damning evidence that Katt's thesis has merit? The fact that Steve Harvey, a man with decades of experience in front of cameras, a man who makes his living with words, a man who has never once been accused of being shy or restrained, cannot stop responding to it. What Hollywood is whispering and why it matters. Here's the broader conversation that Katt Williams opened up that goes beyond just Steve and Marjorie Harvey. He was pointing at a systemic thing. He was saying that the entertainment industry has a pipeline. That success in Hollywood for certain black male entertainers comes attached to conditions that have nothing to do with talent and everything to do with allegiances, relationships, and compromises. The light-skinned wife with no public interviews. That description was deliberate. It wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. Katt repeated it. He said it applied to 7 people. He said it's part of what you get when you sign up for the program. And while we are not in a position to verify each specific claim, what we can say is that the pattern Katt described, a specific type of partner attached to a specific level of access.
Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had.
Is something that people inside the entertainment industry have whispered about for a very long time. The reason it matters isn't just gossip. It matters because if there is indeed a system in place that requires public figures to adopt certain personal arrangements as part of their ascent, then the public personas these figures present, the relationship gurus, the family men, the love story fairy tales, are not organic. They are products. They are manufactured narratives designed to serve a larger machine. And if Steve Harvey has been presenting himself to the world as a relationship expert, as someone qualified to tell millions of people how to think and feel and behave when it comes to love and partnership, while allegedly living inside a manufactured arrangement that he didn't fully choose, then that is not just a personal issue. That is a credibility issue that affects every book he sold, every show he hosted, every piece of advice he dispensed to people who trusted him. Katt Williams wasn't being petty. Katt Williams was pulling on a thread that, if you follow it all the way, unravels a very large and very carefully constructed illusion. The verdict: is Steve Harvey calling any shots? So let's answer the question that's been hanging over this entire conversation. Is Steve Harvey running his household, or is he Marjorie's puppet? Based on everything we've laid out, the pattern of Marjorie's behavior across multiple relationships, the way his second marriage ended, the coordinated attack on Mary Shackleford, the Lori Harvey positioning strategy, the prenup situation with Michael B. Jordan, Steve's increasingly emotional public responses to Katt's allegations, and Marjorie's complete and calculated silence throughout all of it, The picture that emerges is not flattering for Steve. It looks like a man who traded genuine authority for access to a lifestyle and a woman who was willing to give him the appearance of a perfect family in exchange for resources and cover. A transaction dressed up as a love story. A business arrangement wrapped in matching outfits and Instagram captions. Katt Williams didn't just come for Steve Harvey, he came for the entire illusion. He said out loud, with no visible hesitation, that what you see when you look at Steve Harvey's life is not what's actually there. He said the marriage was a product of a system. He said the wife was assigned, not chosen. He said the man you think you know is not the man who is actually making decisions behind closed doors. And 2 years later, with Steve still talking about it and Marjorie still not saying a word, the question isn't really whether Katt is right or wrong. The question is why Steve can't stop proving him right every time he opens his mouth. Because a man who is truly in control of his narrative, truly leading his household, truly unbothered by allegations he knows to be false, that man stops responding. That man moves on. That man lets his life speak for itself. Steve Harvey has not done that. And until he does, Katt Williams wins every single round of this fight without throwing a single additional punch. Now here's what we need from you. Do you think Steve Harvey is genuinely unbothered and just keeps getting pulled back into responding because the media won't let it die? Or do you think his inability to fully let this go is proof that Katt Williams hit something real? Is Marjorie Harvey a self-made survivor who found a good man and built a beautiful life? Or is she exactly what Katt described, a calculated operator who has never once acted without a strategy in mind? And what about Lori Harvey? Is she living her best independent life? Or is she running a playbook her mother wrote before she was old enough to understand what was being handed to her? Drop everything in the comments. This conversation is not over. And if you are not subscribed yet, what exactly are you waiting for? Because we are just getting started.